All right. As Rob said, my name is Chris Glenn. I am with Langen Treadwell Rollo here in Oakland, California. Those of you, if there are folks joining from the East Coast, you may know us simply as Langen. We are an environmental firm. We provide environmental, geotechnical, and civil engineering services. And with that skill set, you might imagine that we're fairly heavily involved in new developments, particularly like brownfield style developments, just because we can assist with the environmental work up front and then through building design with geotechnical and civil engineering services. And I appreciate the opportunity to share a perspective on healthy buildings. And I know that healthy buildings or protection of indoor air quality is really the responsibility of many, many disciplines. I know that everyone here on the panel speaking comes to healthy buildings from a different perspective, and probably many of you who are on the webinar are also involved in one way or another in healthy buildings or indoor air. But I myself am an environmental engineer, and I am often involved in environmental remediation projects, cleaning up sites that eventually will become, new commercial spaces or new residences. So from my perspective, I approach protection of indoor air quality as protection from environmental contaminants that may exist at the site. And because we're involved in that kind of work, we're often consulted as far as protecting indoor air quality also from the things that you voluntarily bring into your building, such as building materials, supplies, furniture, those sorts of items. So, but before I get too heavily into talking about that, I wanted to just step back briefly and take a look at the big picture. And this is, I apologize for anyone outside of the San Francisco Bay Area. This is very San Francisco specific, which is where I work. But whether or not we see it on a daily basis, our area, San Francisco, the East Bay, South Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area, is really being transformed by new developments. We have former industrial shorelines, particularly in San Francisco, that are being redeveloped into brand new neighborhoods. We have brownfield sites being cleaned up and repurposed for new developments. We have, in San Francisco, we have former military properties that are currently being cleaned up by the military and are in the process of being transferred to the city and those will become new developments as well. And as part of my job is working with the city of San Francisco, overseeing the Navy's cleanup of two sites, Treasure Island and Hunters Point. And so we're basically seeing these sites be cleaned up, and they're now in the process of being transferred. And in addition to that, we have, there are the usual gas stations and dry cleaner sites and even landfills that now are being redeveloped, and land is so precious in our area that even many of these sites that we would previously have not developed are now being looked at for development. So the reality of that situation is that the development sites that are now being worked on may not be environmentally pristine. They're former industrial sites, former military sites, like I talked about. And those of us who work in environmental remediation know that even with the best remediation strategy, you can't always get the site as clean as it started. Not that the sites are in any way unsafe, but it's very difficult to get 100% of contamination out of the soil and groundwater. And so what we're seeing is that engineered systems within buildings are being installed to protect indoor air quality. And in some cases, these may be required by regulatory agencies. But in many cases, it's just a voluntary added level of protection that developers are choosing to place to protect residents, above and beyond any regulated requirement. So what we're talking about here is called vapor intrusion. It's the movement of chemicals from soil and groundwater that may be present in soil and groundwater into buildings in the vicinity or above the groundwater, into basements and the crawl spaces, that sort of thing. You might have, if you're not familiar with this, you may have heard of it in the context of radon in certain parts of the country. So one of the things that we do is we will design what's called a vapor mitigation system. These are systems that are designed and constructed during the construction of the actual building, and they help protect the indoor air from contaminants that may exist in the environment beneath it. And it's really there are two parts to a vapor mitigation system. The first is this vapor barrier that's kind of a spray-applied tarry-like membrane that's sprayed down and goes right beneath the building slab of the development. And then beneath the building slab, beneath that vapor barrier, there's typically a venting layer consisting of crushed rock, and we'll place perforated pipes to collect any vapors that may accumulate in that layer, and those are vented up to the top of the building through above the roof. So I don't want to get into too much detail, but just to give you a couple of pictures of what these systems typically look like. This is a perforated pipe venting system that's here being installed, and the concrete slab is going to be poured eventually on top of it. So once that venting system is put in, this is a picture of showing the crushed rock that's then covering the venting system, and you can see down at the foreground the vapor membrane is partially applied at this site. Another couple key points to a vapor mitigation system is there are these inlet vents that are placed that just allow some fresh air from the outside to enter the area beneath the building foundation, and just helps to flush out any vapors that may accumulate there. And then, like I said, all the venting system that's beneath the building ultimately makes its way up to the rooftop. And this is a picture of a wind turbine that powers the airflow to vent out any contaminants that may exist beneath the building slab. So to get more specific into sustainability concepts, which is what we're all interested in here, vapor mitigation systems can help sustainability in a number of different ways. One is that it facilitates reuse of urban properties that otherwise might not be developed or might not be developed the way that the communities want them to be developed. The use of a VMS really makes it possible to turn almost any site into a residence or a commercial establishment without having to be concerned about indoor air quality. The second sustainability concept is simply protection of indoor air quality, which is obviously an important part of any building design. Also, one of the good things about these VMS systems is that they're generally passively powered. I showed a picture a couple slides ago of the wind turbine, and that's really the only source of power that's generating the airflow that's flushing out contamination that may exist beneath the building. So it's completely wind-driven and has very low operation requirements and costs. And lastly, these systems are really designed to work within an existing building design to minimize the amount of additional materials needed to put in the system. And an example of that is for those of you who may be familiar with building design, there's typically a crushed rock layer right beneath the building slab. It serves as a capillary break, and I'm not a moisture control expert, but my understanding is that it helps to keep moisture away from the slab and getting through the slab. And there's typically also a moisture barrier that is applied. So the systems that we put in the venting system operates within that capillary break that already exists, that is already going to be installed in the building. And the membrane that we put down also doubles as a moisture barrier, so you may have to put in this vapor barrier, but then you don't need to put in a moisture barrier. So there's some cost efficiency as well as sustainability there. So the last point I wanted to touch on is, and this is really where our work is driving improvements, I think, in building materials or furniture, items that go inside of a building. Basically, when we put in a vapor mitigation system, it often has to be tested, and that testing involves collection of indoor air, analyzing that indoor air to see if there are any contaminants entering the building from below. And what we're finding is that these systems are really pretty good. It's pretty rare for contamination, any kind of contaminants, even very tiny levels like the ones that we're measuring, to enter a building. But there are all these things that we voluntarily bring into a building, like building materials, furniture, supplies, and those can all contain the same contaminants that we spent all of this time and money to make sure they don't get in from the environment. And so we often spend quite a bit of time reviewing, say, the volatile organic compound content of supplies that come into the buildings, and it's often very tedious and sometimes impossible to really know what is actually, the ingredients that are actually in these materials that come into the building. So a number of our clients, in conjunction with the vapor mitigation system, have decided to pursue certain certifications to minimize the chance that they're bringing in some environmental contaminants just in the supplies that they're bringing in. So they're looking at certification programs like Indoor Air Advantage, and that really, frankly, makes our job quite a bit easier as well, because then we know that there's not this source of chemicals that's coming off of furniture, and we know anything that's in the building is representative of the air quality that we want. So that's the end of my short presentation here. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about these systems in more detail if they like. This is my contact information. And I will turn it over to Todd to present the next section. Actually, sorry, I will turn it back over to SF Agrion.
Yeah, perfect.
For the next
Thanks,
presentation.
Chris.
Thank you, Chris. And again, for anybody who had recently just joined us, don't hesitate to submit any questions into the question pane or the chat box, and we'll go ahead and address those in the Q&A period of the webinar. And so now over to Todd with Kilroy Realty.
Rob, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. So good morning, everyone. My name is Todd Harris. I'm with Kilroy Realty Corporation. For those of you that don't know Kilroy, we are a full-service real estate company headquartered in Los Angeles, but active in most West Coast markets. We're a publicly traded REIT, and we have both a stabilized portfolio of operating properties and also have several $1 billion worth of development underway in the major markets on the West Coast. I'm on the development and construction services side, so I'm primarily involved in the development of new projects. And as Chris mentioned, most of our sites in the Bay Area have, without exception, really some level of environmental challenges that require, phase 2 testing, remediation, soil off-fall, and some kind of mitigation system. So we just consider that kind of standard business, and we often I mean, we don't shy away from these, and you don't really have a choice. So as far as our sustainability achievements, we do have, some of you may know Sarah Neff. She's our VP of Sustainability based out of LA. And so she leads our sustainability efforts and has done an outstanding job in the last 4 years of various initiatives, whether it's Green Lease Leader or Energy Star certified buildings, and lead for our new development and construction projects. If you haven't met her, at some point you may want to try to introduce yourself. I'm happy to facilitate that, but she's a great resource, very knowledgeable, and a tremendous asset to Kilroy. Okay, so I thought it'd be helpful for everyone to get a handle for an understanding of some of the projects that Kilroy works on, and so I'll flip through a couple highlights of some of our projects. So this first one, LinkedIn, is a build-to-suit in Sunnyvale, California. And this one does have a vapor mitigation system that Chris mentioned. Actually, Lang & Trubel Rollo assisted us on the design and implementation of this. But this is a Class A office building in Sunnyvale. The next project. So here's a couple images of that project. The one that I'm currently spending most of my time on is this Mission Bay Block 40 in San Francisco. It's 4 buildings, approximately 700,000 square feet. This will be a LEED Platinum building, and it'll be the first building that Kilroy has registered, and will be pursuing the WELL building certification. And so if people know about that program, that will focus heavily on the indoor air quality, and will require some extensive testing of indoor air and water, drinking water, shower water, at the end of the completion of construction. So we're working with Delos Living out in New York City on that program, and we're excited to have that as a WELL building in the future. Next slide is, let's see, what's our next project? Okay, Audience is a small build-to-suit we did in Mountain View, California. People may be familiar with this project. It's in the MU, it's a Middlefield Ellis Wisman area of Mountain View, which is a EPA Superfund study area. And so the EPA has used this sub-market of Mountain View as kind of a focus on how they should be handling these indoor air quality and vapor mitigation systems. So this project has a passive subslab system, very similar to the one that Chris described. And what Chris, I don't think, mentioned, that these systems are, I think, considered fairly robust and bulletproof, and we've never had a failure of these systems. But if there is still an issue with indoor air contaminants, you can activate the system. It's currently passive, where it ventilates through the subslab and up through the roof, but you can activate these systems if you need that. And maybe Chris could talk to it in a later discussion. I'm not aware of any buildings ever requiring them to be activated. But Audience is the tenant here, and they are very focused on the indoor air quality and are eager to get the indoor air quality results. We do that on a biannual basis. When we commissioned this building and the subslab system, we had to flush the building for several days and then test the indoor air quality with the mechanical systems both on and off, and then get the test results for that those two scenarios. People may also remember probably a year and a half ago in the news, Google had a building which is very close to this Audience building, and it was in the news how it had indoor air quality problems, and that they had to vacate that building. And what happened there is, it's the again, the Mew area of Mountain View, and they were doing tenant improvements, and I believe the contractor, punctured the subslab system, and then it created a big problem and PR issue for Google. The next project here, Dropbox 333 Brandon in San Francisco. We do not have any subslab system here, but it was an environmentally contaminated site, and so it's a brownfield site. This is a LEED platinum building designed by William McDonough Partners, and fully leased to Dropbox. And I think that might be it. If no, there's one more project here. There's a picture of the 333 Brandon. And then lastly, the Salesforce is a project here in San Francisco. It's 350 Mission. It's 30-story high-rise designed by SOM and will be LEED Platinum and fully leased to Salesforce. So I hope that gives people a feel for the type of projects that we work on and our approach to sustainability. I'll turn it back over to Chris, or I'm sorry, Rob.
Great, thanks, Todd. Now we're going to hop over to Gene with HDR.
Okay, thank you. So this is me. I'm the Sustainable Interiors Manager for HDR. I have a background in interior design, medical planning, as well as sustainability. And for HDR, I work on projects from a sustainable perspective from many different levels, advancing sustainability overall in a project, as well as researching materials in a deep green perspective. Some of my focus is definitely on chemicals of concern, as well as healthy indoor environments. And to start any project off, we always try to make sure we've got the integrated team, the full team together, and we approach our work with the precautionary principle, trying to make sure that we're definitely leaning on the better safe than sorry continuum. And as I mentioned, we definitely try to make sure we've got a full integrated team together, so we really understand our clients' goals, what their mission is for the project, and we work together to develop goals for that project specifically and have everybody on board with that moving forward, and having those goals available to revisit throughout each stage of the project. And as I mentioned, we always try to really understand, who our client is, what their mission is, and this is just an example of one of our clients understanding their mission and how it ties to sustainability and environmental considerations. And so for this client, really paying attention to the health, the value, the environment, and the communities that they're going to serve, so that they can enhance the ability of future generations to accomplish their mission. So we always try to make sure we really have this available to us and share that with the entire team. We also try to find out what other type of resources our clients have in place. This is just Kaiser Permanente's example of having an environmental purchasing plan in place and avoiding chemicals of concern, as well as stringent indoor air quality requirements. So the goal is basically to design a healthy interior environment. And to achieve that from an interiors perspective, we've got to really evaluate the materials and make sure that they're the healthiest options available to us. And not only from the materials themselves, but also how they're going to be maintained in the long run. And when we begin a project, we look at what type of research is available, evidence-based design research. We look at general sustainability requirements. We definitely focus on indoor environmental quality. We also look at the products from a perspective of whether they've got chemicals of concern, any hazards that we ought to have discussions about that may drive us to look at alternatives available. We ask manufacturers to be transparent, and I also always ask manufacturers for their proposed green cleaning protocols, so that we can understand that the products can be cleaned with the green cleaning protocol. So when we as a designer see this project handed over to the client, we know that the indoor environmental air quality that we have tried to achieve with our design can be maintained from a cleaning perspective. So I spoke to the fact that we try to first ascertain whether, what type of evidence-based design, what type of research exists out there that we can explain to our clients how we go about making some of our decisions. We identify, the safety issues, the non-toxic issues, acoustics, durability, flexibility, and as I mentioned, that the products are maintainable. All of this is something that we take into consideration as we look at the materials we're specifying. And we also help the team to understand which of the lead credits that we'll be pursuing, if it's a lead project or if it's just a sustainable project, what we're trying to pursue and achieve with the project overall, and how that can tie in with the research that is out there available in the market today. And we will, and you can see the fourth column over from the right ties in with the low emitting materials credit. And so we will help our clients understand how our goals tie in with a number of different attributes that we expect the materials to meet, including indoor environmental air quality. And as the lead rating system has been moving along and adapting to greater knowledge that we're able to develop over the years, we see that there's more and more products that people can actually get credit towards achieving stringent indoor air quality requirements, which also means the marketplace is moving. More and more products are available that meet very stringent indoor air quality requirements, and you can see here from, interior paint systems, adhesives, flooring, composite wood products, insulation, ceilings, walls, furniture, as well as exterior applied products. And even though the lead rating system, for instance, only gives you credit for pursuing selected products for the exterior for healthcare and schools, that would be something that we would look at for any project, because it just, is a best practice at this point in time. There are a lot of different certification programs that do exist in the market today and have existed for quite a while, and so we've seen amazing product improvements over time, which is makes it better for all of us. We always look to make sure that they meet the most stringent indoor air quality requirements. If they don't, we don't even consider evaluating those products for use on the project. But there's always room for improvement, and we have conversations with manufacturers all the time about identifying those areas where we do need to see improvement. But in addition to looking at the indoor air quality requirements, we also ask manufacturers to be transparent about what goes into their products. They can also contribute from a semi-volatile organic compound or SVOCs. They can influence people's health, because 62,000 chemicals in commerce were grandfathered in the mid-70s, and the EPA's only regulated 5 of those chemicals, and we have about 2,000 new chemicals added to the market every year, and no environmental or health data is required on them, and so we really lack a lot of information. So we do ask manufacturers to be transparent so that we can evaluate products from any health hazards, in addition to the indoor air quality. And luckily today there are a lot of opportunities to be able to, for manufacturers to be doing that evaluation in-house, so that they can provide us with that information through the Health Product Declaration, the Cradle to Cradle programs, the Living Building Challenges Declare program, and some others. So as I mentioned, today we have a lot of opportunity to select from many different products that meet really stringent indoor air quality requirements. And a lot of this is due to the fact that the LEED rating system did come about, and they gave credit to manufacturers and to teams, to actually achieve that. And so we've got great success there. What's even better, though, is to look at products from a much more holistic perspective, to look at them from perspective of meeting stringent indoor air quality requirements, and in terms of being transparent about what goes into their products, and having to transition to safer, healthier content, such as this example of that I've got on the screen here from Armstrong Ceilings. And this is due to a lot of work from a lot of end users asking for the products to meet stringent indoor air quality requirements, and in addition to that, to have healthier content. So it's a win-win situation all around. So we're seeing more and more manufacturers really looking at products from a much more holistic perspective. So it's important to ask manufacturers to do that and to reward the ones that have done it by specifying their products. We also use the same criteria with furniture. And the criteria here that you see on the screen is from LEED for Healthcare for the furniture and medical furnishings credit. And there's 3 different ways to go about meeting this particular credit. And you can see highlighted in red that option 2 and 3 require that the products meet California Section 1350, which is the old terminology, but still the simplest way to call it out. And so we always, no matter whether we're meeting option 1, 2, or 3, the first criteria is that the furniture meet stringent indoor air quality requirements. And then we also ask the manufacturers to be open and transparent about what goes into those products. And there are definitely some internationally agreed upon chemicals of concern that we try to avoid as well. LEED for Commercial Interiors also has a Healthy Materials Furniture standard, and they also require that the furniture meet stringent indoor air quality requirements. So no matter how you're going about specifying furniture, if you're using a LEED rating system or not, the furniture industry, for much of the furniture today, especially for offices, some of the furniture for healthcare facilities and some other very specialized areas, not all of the furniture has been tested, but I would say a good portion of it has. And so we're in a very good position to not accept anything less than something meeting really stringent indoor air quality requirements. And when we're putting together information for our client, we document all of this. On one project, I evaluated over 150 materials for the 6 buildings going into a new campus. We looked at the general LEED attributes because we were pursuing LEED certification for our client on that project. We looked to make sure that all of the products met stringent indoor air quality requirements, and then as well avoided the chemicals of concern. And we then recommended, which of the products met those that we would suggest to our client that we would actually use. In addition to everything I've just covered, earlier I did mention that we also make sure that the products, we understand how the products need to be maintained, and also that they can be maintained with a green cleaning protocol. So we also look at the life cycle of those products. We look at, what do they cost initially, and what does it cost to maintain them? And so in this example, you've got information about what it could cost to maintain that product over a 15-year period. So there are some flooring products that can really detrimentally harm human and environmental health if they need to be waxed and stripped. They can trigger asthma, they can trigger respiratory illness, and imagine where all of that wax and those strippers are going to go when the floor is clean. So we work with our clients to help them understand which of the flooring products, since that's one of the flooring products, one of the products in the building that have to be cleaned on a regular basis and quite frequently, and it really can harm human and environmental health. So we help them to understand more of the life cycle, and we help them to understand from a cleaning perspective that they really need to focus on having a safer chemical policy. We've worked with many of them to develop green cleaning protocols, and a great example of an organization that can help with that, if you happen to be working on a healthcare facility, is the Healthier Hospitals Initiative. And they actually have a green cleaning, they have green cleaning information available for free for anyone to use, and an actual initiative for clients to achieve in addition to a healthy interior. And as I mentioned, we work with many of our clients to develop green cleaning protocols for them, as well as an integrated pest management program. The two really go hand in hand that will help to contribute to good indoor air quality. And the San Francisco Department of the Environment, who happens to be sponsoring today's program, I just want to put a plug into them. They've got great resources available for you to work with your clients to help them to develop green cleaning protocols, and as well as integrated pest management programs. Their website's got great information. They've done their homework. They've got a list of green cleaning chemicals that are approved, pre-approved through a very stringent program that they've had in place for quite a while now. And so we've worked with that with many of our clients, and they found it to work very well. So thank you. And I'm going to turn it back over to Rob and to Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. We're now in our question and answer portion of the webinar, so if anyone has anything else they'd like to ask the panelists or learn from the panelists, please feel free to type it in the question pane. So we do have a few in the queue. The first one is directed towards Chris. Chris, I think it's referring to your last slide that you had up. Which VOCs are of particular interest in that context?
Sure. Let's see, referring to my last slide. Well, the VOCs that are most of concern are the ones that are most prevalent in the environment, at least for us. So the on sites that have been formerly industrial or military, or just used as gas stations, the thing that ends up left over in the ground or groundwater that's of most concern is like benzene, for example. If it's a dry cleaner site, the dry cleaner solvent called tetrachloroethene, that's a mouthful, or PCE. So when we're looking at testing indoor air quality, we're really testing for those specific volatile, like organic compounds, benzene or PCE usually.
Okay, great. Thank you. Another question. For indoor design, do you ask suppliers to use alternative assessment methodologies to look at safer materials? Also, how do you ensure that the indoor airspace meets the indoor air quality requirements? The challenge, of course, being to not only understand the toxicology, but also the exposure and how you measure and characterize the air quality. Anybody want to tackle that one?
Well, from an interiors perspective, I mean, we're working with a full team. We've got our mechanical engineers on board, and any and everybody else that we really need to have a part of that team, as well as we try to make sure that we've got the environmental services team on board from our client side, so that we understand and we're working in agreement with them as to what materials are going to work the best for them. And we ask manufacturers a lot of questions. I would have to say that today almost the majority of the manufacturers we tend to work with already meet the most stringent indoor air quality requirements. They've done the testing, they've done the protocol. There was one manufacturer that a furniture manufacturer our design team was interested in specifying, and they hadn't done any testing. They hadn't done any work from a sustainability perspective, but it was a large project and they were very interested, so they asked me what they needed to do, and I gave them a number of recommendations. They found some great people out there, and they began the work. And so I figure by the time that project is ready to actually purchase the furniture for it, they'll be a very strong contender for being able to bid on that project. But we definitely work with our full team. We work with our mechanical engineers to make sure that the building is going to be designed to meet our clients' goals and our own internal goals and our best, the best practices that we suggest. There's many people that are really responsible for making sure that the design of that building and the mechanical system is going to achieve what our goals are. I hope that answers the question.
But Jean, at the end of the day, is there indoor air quality testing done to make sure you achieved a certain level of indoor air quality?
I would say on the majority of our projects, yes, that does happen.
Thank you.
Well, that ties
Sure.
in pretty nicely with one of the other questions we have here. How is the industry typically trying to monetize going above and beyond the stringent air quality requirements? Also, are there ways to measure the additional benefits that occupants receive in a quantitative way?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that, and someone can chime in. At Kilroy, we are big believers in sustainability for the obvious reasons, that it's just good, sound business practice and good management. We also think it improves our bottom line. Our investors view our sustainability approach as good management. And we also see that it is a differentiator in the marketplace. A lot of these tech tenants on the West Coast, they are very focused on sustainability and having healthy buildings. And so if we can stay on the cutting edge of that, we can, we believe it's a competitive advantage for the marketing of our properties and how we lease properties. And so we just see it really as a triple win. It's the right thing to do for the environment, for the, the tenants, our customers, and we believe it's just good business practice.
And we also have clients that we design buildings for them that they operate, that they own, and they operate their, 24/7 because they're hospitals. And we have clients that have seen their nurses and their other staff have to go home, call in sick, after they've been at work for a while if they are there while the floors are cleaned, while they're waxed, while they're stripped. And they have changed the flooring in their facilities to be the type of flooring that does not require it to be waxed and then stripped, and to have a much healthier cleaning protocol. And they've seen a huge change in the number of people that end up going home sick while they're working. And so that they really do see that value of specifying the right products that can be maintained in a healthy manner and just provide, better indoor environmental quality overall for everyone.
Yeah, and Gene, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Kilroy is moving to a no-chemical system called Lotus for cleaning, janitorial cleaning. And that system uses electrolyzed water instead of chemicals. And so that's something that we're initiating and implementing.
Oh, that's fabulous. I was researching that last year, that whole system. And we do have clients that, use basically water much of the time, and just makes a huge difference in many ways.
What is the regulatory landscape for indoor air quality? Are any additional regulations expected, or what's on the horizon?
So
I can speak a little bit of that, Gene, but do you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
So I'll just speak in the context of our project in Mountain View in the Mew area, the Wissman area. That was the 331 Fairchild project. So the EPA has used that as a study area, and they have been really using that as kind of a case study of what to do and how to regulate other projects in the United States. And in response to that, we have formed an organization called the Mountain View Commercial Owners Association, which is made up of owners of property in this submarket that's affected by the EPA regulations. And we meet a couple times a year to go over the latest EPA regulations and propose studies and testing that they're going to do or potentially impose upon the properties in the study area. And it's actually kind of surprising to see sometimes how aggressive the EPA can be and how they can come out with some studies and findings that may or may not be based on robust research and data that could really impact the viability of a project. and what I mean by that is they have come out and said that, you know, that certain exposure to a chemical for a very brief period of time can cause a human health. And making a claim like that can obviously have huge ripple effects to tenants and to the marketplace. And we believe some of the claims they make and some of the regulations they're proposing have to be watched carefully. So I guess that's one thing that we're focused on, is really trying to stay up to speed with what the EPA is doing on a regulatory front. Then on the kind of more the local level, I don't have any recent experience, but there's the Regional Water Quality Control Board and the DTSC, Department of Toxic and Substance Control. They, Chris, you may be able to speak to some of their efforts on the regulatory front locally.
Yeah, so you know, working as an environmental engineer, I work in a heavily regulated environment when it comes to site investigations, site cleanups for environmental contaminants. There's always an agency, or maybe 2 or 3, looking over what we do. And you know, it's interesting for buildings that are built on sites that were formerly cleaned up. The level of scrutiny is very high, you know, from regulatory agencies, and they're often requiring testing down to, you know, barely above just the detectable limit of certain concentrations, really kind of pushing the laboratory, just laboratory technology. That's kind of how low they're wanting to test. And it strikes me as interesting that the Agrion meetings I've gone to talk about indoor air quality or sustainability in general, you know, most of that seems to be voluntary, and there's like not really a whole lot, as Gene was talking about, not really a whole lot of regulation. And it's a little bit bizarre to me because it's, you know, similar compounds, and it seems like they both have an equal potential to be good or bad for the health of the occupants. But when it comes to contamination on a site, it's heavily regulated, and when it comes to bringing in, you know, sofas into your office, it's not regulated at all. Maybe Gene could comment on that.
Well, that is so true. It's just unbelievable what we allow in this country. I don't, and this doesn't have to do with indoor air quality exactly, but it has to do with semi-volatile organic compounds, not volatile organic compounds. But in California, we've had a flame retardant regulation or standard in place for furniture, upholstered furniture for both residential and commercial use since the mid-'70s. And the way the furniture manufacturers found that the best and most inexpensive way to meet that was to add flame retardants to the upholstery foam. And because it's the flame retardant isn't molecularly bound to the foam, it gets released over the life of that furniture. And you can find the flame retardants in dust in furniture. I mean, in our interior environments, and there's a whole host of health issues related to many of the flame retardants. We don't know enough about absolutely all of them, but we know a lot about many of them. And so just as of January 1st this year, furniture manufacturers have a grace year in which to either start moving away from flame retardants and to do the research, or actually move away this year. And people can actually now either purchase for their own homes or for their businesses. They can purchase furniture in California with no flame retardants in the upholstery foam. And the new standard for testing the furniture identifies the fact that the fabric is what's really important in the design of and the selection for that furniture. And so, I mean, that's just one item of all of the elements that go into a building is upholstered furniture. And but there's so many other examples, you know, and you know, there were the best intentions to try to protect people's lives. We didn't know enough in the mid-1970s, but we know a lot more, and we keep learning more. But yeah, there really aren't a whole lot of regulations, and this new standard for furniture still gives the furniture manufacturers a choice. They can still continue to meet the new standard with flame retardants in the foam or not. As of January 1st next year, they have to meet this new regulation. But it's a de facto standard for all of North America, and anyway, it's pretty sad that there, in many ways, that there are not some better regulations or better standards for the interior. But we are learning more, and manufacturers they're quick learners, and they want people to buy things, so we can all vote with what we choose to purchase, and that really sends a very clear message, and it's what helps make a difference in our buildings every day that we occupy.
And in terms of the existing regulatory requirements, who's driving it? Is it primarily the EPA? Is it also groups like OSHA or NIH? What do you see as the drivers for that?
Rob, this is Chris. I think you got it there. It's the EPA as well as state of California regulators. Generally not OSHA. The kinds of concentrations that we're talking about are much lower than anything that OSHA would care about. When we're talking about indoor occupancy, you're looking at somebody living in their home for a lifetime or working in an office, if they're lucky for their, the majority of their adult life, whereas OSHA is more looking at, your occupational health over a few years, more shorter duration. So yeah, I think it is the state as well as EPA.
And there's a lot of other organizations that help to oversee healthcare facilities, and it depends which state you're in. In California, we have what we call, those of us in the healthcare industry call OSHPA, the Office of State Health Planning and Development, and there's the guidelines. I just blanked out on the full name of it, but there's healthcare guidelines that we have to design to. There's JCAHO, the Joint Commission folks. I mean, it gets very, very complex. You've got to really be able to meet a lot of different regulations. And individual cities or counties can have, influence on how you need to design facilities as well. So it depends on the project type. And labs, there's a whole other set of regulations when it comes to labs and the requirements that you need to meet. So each building type can have their own very specific types of regulations that need to be met.
Okay, and a question for Jean here. HDR was one of the first firms that endorsed HPDs. You seem to also endorse 100 ppm levels for certain groups of chemicals of concern, which may require testing. How do you deal with Prop 65 chemicals revealed on HPDs?
Well, we try to understand what products we have available for us to even consider, first of all, and then we try to understand all of them at the deepest level that is possible and available in the market today, and we look at it from the full life cycle. We don't try to just look at it from a design perspective. We try to also look at it from a perspective of how it's going to be maintained, and all of the other attributes materials have to meet. But if there are some chemicals of concern that are identified and there are safer alternatives in the market, we have to take into consideration all of the different attributes that product's got to meet, and we review it with our clients, and together we make decisions about what's going to be the best in the long run.
Great. And so we have time for one last question here. Healthy buildings have been referred to as the next generation of green building. Can you share some of your thoughts on that and how you've seen the building industry grow over the past several years, in some ways pushing the boundaries beyond environmental sustainability?
Well, this is Jean. I guess I could tackle that one. I think what is really important to see is, and very exciting to see, is that manufacturers so many of them really understand what many of the issues are, and they're really working hard towards trying to improve. Designers and design teams, the engineers, everyone, you know, we're all on this trajectory to continue to learn, to continue to adopt new ideas, and there's a lot of people that are engaged in research.